Imagine this. You wake up, and before your feet hit the floor, your mind's already racing. Notifications buzz, your calendar is full, the world is shouting, texts, emails, traffic, deadlines, noise. You move through the day on autopilot, always doing, always responding, always connected, but somewhere deep inside, something feels off. You can't name it exactly, but it's there. A low hum of unease, a sense that you've drifted far from something important. Not a person, not a goal, but yourself. And here's the strange part. The world tells you this is normal. That distraction is productivity. That busy equals success. That being on all the time is how you stay relevant, competitive, needed. But what if that's the lie? What if the truth is that you're starving for something you've forgotten how to crave? Solitude. Not loneliness, not boredom, but true solitude. A space that's yours alone. A space where you can think, feel, breathe. A space where you can hear your own voice again, not the voice of your feed, your friends, or your fears. It's wild how rare that is now. We're more connected than ever, and more disconnected from ourselves. We think of solitude as a retreat, a withdrawal. But what if it's actually the opposite? What if solitude isn't about escape, it's about arrival, about finally showing up to the one place you've been avoiding, your own mind? You see, we've confused solitude with absence. We think being alone means something's missing. We think silence is awkward. That stillness is wasteful. But ask anyone who's truly mastered their craft, an artist, a philosopher, a monk, a deep thinker, and they'll tell you the most important things are born in silence. The most meaningful realizations happen when the noise stops. Solitude is not a void, it's a crucible. It's where identity is forged, where illusions dissolve, where clarity sharpens like a blade. And that's exactly why we avoid it. Because solitude doesn't just expose the world, it exposes you, your patterns, your shadows, your fears, the uncomfortable questions that hide beneath the busyness. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Who am I becoming? What am I running from? Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." But how can we awaken if we never look inside? That's the problem. Most people never do, not really. They live in reaction mode, responding to whatever life throws at them, numbing with distraction when things get too real, always chasing the next thing, more validation, more goals, more noise, and they call it ambition. But what if ambition without introspection is just avoidance in disguise? We live in an age where solitude is almost impossible by default. We carry our distractions in our pockets, we measure our value by engagement, we've replaced stillness with scrolling and called it rest. But the soul doesn't rest through stimulation, it rests in stillness, in presence, in awareness. And that's the paradox. The very thing we avoid, being alone with ourselves, is the thing we most desperately need, because only in solitude can you begin to untangle the wires of your mind. Only in solitude can you start to hear the faint voice beneath the noise, the one that says, "This is who you really are." You don't need to run away to a monastery or live in a cabin in the woods to experience solitude. It can start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes of silence in the morning, 5 minutes without your phone, 5 minutes where you let your thoughts land without judgment or editing. It feels awkward at first, like you're wasting time, but stay with it. Let the stillness stretch. Soon you'll notice things, emotions you've been pushing away, ideas you didn't know you had, truths you've been afraid to admit, and slowly you'll realize solitude isn't loneliness, it's intimacy with yourself. It's the space where you stop performing, where you stop trying to be everything to everyone, where you start to remember who you are without the noise. Here's the truth, no one tells you. Solitude is uncomfortable at first because it shows you what's really going on inside, and for many of us that's terrifying. We've built our identities on productivity, validation, distraction. So when all of that is stripped away, what's left? The answer is hard, but it's also honest. And it's only in that honesty that true transformation begins. To be alone is not to be empty. It is to be free. Free to feel, free to think, free to become. That's the power of solitude. And once you taste it, not as punishment but as practice, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. So let's say you've started, you carve out time for yourself. No phone, no noise, no to-do list. Just you, alone. It's peaceful for about 30 seconds. Then something happens. The silence starts to itch. Your thoughts begin racing. Old memories show up. Self-doubt creeps in. You suddenly remember a dozen things you could be doing. Laundry, replying to emails, checking what's trending. It feels easier to give in, but don't. Stay. This is the part where most people run, not because they hate being alone, but because solitude reveals, and what it reveals is often uncomfortable. Solitude is a mirror, and not the polished, Instagram filter kind. It's a mirror that shows you the parts of yourself you've been too busy to face, your regrets, your insecurities, your real desires, the ones buried under other people's expectations. And that's the strange power of being alone. When there's no one left to impress, no noise left to chase, you finally start to see what's actually going on inside you. And at first, it's not flattering. Maybe you realize how restless you are without distraction, or how easily your self-worth crumbles when you're not being productive. Maybe you hear the voice you've been drowning out for years, the one that says, "This isn't the life I want." This is why solitude has become so rare. Not because we don't have time for it, but because we're terrified of what it might show us. Modern life gives us endless ways to escape ourselves. We binge, we scroll, we hustle, we consume, and all of it works for a while. But in the quiet, you can't lie to yourself. There's no audience, no applause, no validation, just you and your unfiltered mind. And maybe that's exactly what we need. Nietzsche once said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." It's a fight to think for yourself, to know yourself, to be yourself. And that fight can't be won in the crowd, it starts in solitude. In a world that profits from your distraction, choosing solitude is an act of rebellion. You're not supposed to unplug, you're not supposed to question the script, you're supposed to keep scrolling, buying, posting, conforming. But solitude breaks the loop. It slows things down. It makes space for real thought. It helps you see which of your beliefs are truly yours and which ones were handed to you. It's not always pretty, but it's real. And that reality, it's the soil for transformation. Solitude isn't just about silence, it's about integration. It's where the scattered parts of you, your desires, fears, contradictions, start to come together into something whole. You begin to notice patterns. You see how often your decisions are driven by fear, not freedom. How your relationships sometimes reflect your wounds, not your values. How you've built a life chasing things that never actually fill you. And slowly, gently, you begin to shift. Not because someone told you to, not because you read it in a book, but because you saw it for yourself. That's real change, that's real growth. And it begins in solitude. When you've spent enough time alone, something shifts inside you. You become harder to manipulate. You stop craving constant approval. You stop fearing silence. You stop confusing motion with meaning. You become someone who doesn't need the crowd to feel whole. And in a world built on conformity, that kind of person is powerful. They can think clearly, speak honestly, act decisively, because their compass isn't out there, it's in here. That's the kind of strength solitude gives you. This isn't about isolating yourself forever. It's not about becoming a hermit or rejecting society. It's about returning to yourself regularly, like going to the gym for your soul. Start small, 10 minutes a day, journal, sit in silence, walk without headphones. Ask yourself real questions. What am I avoiding? What actually matters to me? Where am I lying to myself? Don't rush for answers. Just sit with the questions, let them breathe, let them work on you. Over time, you'll find something unexpected. The silence isn't empty, it's full of insight, intuition, and inner guidance. You might find peace, or clarity, or something deeper, like meaning. You might realize that much of what you were chasing was just noise, that the life you really want is simpler, truer, quieter. Or you might just learn to be okay with yourself, with all your contradictions, flaws, and unfinished parts. And that's freedom. Not the kind the world sells you, but the kind you earn in the quiet. Let's be honest, solitude isn't just hard to find, it's actively discouraged. We live in a world that praises hustle, celebrates noise, and rewards constant connection. If you're not busy, you're seen as lazy. If you're not posting, you're irrelevant. If you're not social, you're suspicious. We've made noise a virtue, and in doing so, we've pathologized silence. Think about it. We're more connected than ever. We can call, text, stream, scroll, and swipe at any second of the day. But ask yourself, when was the last time you felt truly connected to yourself? We mistake stimulation for aliveness, but constant input dulls our inner voice. It buries our own wisdom under a flood of other people's opinions, and the more we outsource our attention, the more we lose touch with what actually matters to us. Solitude is powerful, and power always threatens the status quo, because the person who spends time alone is harder to influence, less likely to conform, more capable of seeing through the noise. That kind of person doesn't fall for empty promises or shallow trends. They don't need to prove anything. They've already had the deeper conversation, alone, in silence. So why would a system built on insecurity want you to be still? It wouldn't, and it doesn't. Solitude forces depth, and depth is uncomfortable, because when you stop distracting yourself, you feel things. You feel the grief you've been pushing down, the dreams you've shelved, the anxiety that's been humming in the background. But here's the truth no one tells you. Feeling these things isn't a failure. It's the beginning of healing. You can't transform what you refuse to face, and you can't face anything if you never slow down. Here's something counterintuitive. Solitude isn't about becoming better. It's about becoming honest. We've turned self-help into a race. More goals, more hacks, more transformation. But solitude invites a different path. Not to upgrade yourself, but to understand yourself. Not to hustle harder, but to ask why you're hustling at all. Not to fix your flaws, but to make peace with your wholeness, including the broken parts. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The most important work you'll ever do won't show up on a resume. It's not measurable, it's not scalable, and it sure won't go viral. It's the inner work, the work of sitting with your own truth, of peeling back layers that were never really yours, of asking again and again, who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe, really? What am I willing to unlearn? That's not easy, but it's real, and it happens in solitude. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. As soon as you're with others, you start adjusting your words, your energy, your truth. It's not a flaw, it's human. But without solitude, you forget who you are beneath all that adjusting. You become a reflection of what the world expects, instead of the expression of who you truly are." Think of solitude as sacred ground, not a punishment, not a void, but a return to what you love when no one's judging, what you fear when no one's distracting, what you need when no one else is defining your worth. It's where authenticity begins and where alignment grows. Because if you don't know who you are alone, you'll keep searching for yourself in places that can't reflect you. Yes, solitude can be painful, but you know what's worse? A life lived out of alignment, a soul starved for its own voice, a self that never got to breathe. Solitude gives you space to course correct. It reminds you of the long game, the deep work, the quiet truth. And the truth is, you don't need to do more. You need to listen more, because everything you're looking for might already be inside you, but you'll only hear it in the silence. Let's bring it all together. Solitude isn't just something you stumble into when life goes quiet. It's something you choose, it's something you create, and ultimately, it's something you become. Because when you've spent enough time alone, not lonely, but truly alone, you stop needing the world to tell you who you are. You already know. The world talks a lot about confidence, but most of it is fake. It's loud, it's flashy, it's desperate to be seen. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to shout. It speaks softly because it doesn't need validation. And solitude is how you build that kind of confidence. It's in the hours no one sees, when you're not performing, not proving, not pretending, that you become solid inside. You don't bend in the wind of opinion. You don't chase what doesn't align. You lead yourself, even when the world goes silent. Especially when the world goes silent, there's a kind of inner sovereignty that only grows in solitude, because when you've sat with your fears, felt your disappointments, heard your inner critic rage, and learned not to obey it, you realize something profound. You are not your thoughts. You are not your wounds. You are not your past. You are the one who witnesses them. And that witness, that awareness, that's the seat of your power. In a culture addicted to stimulation, solitude is rebellion. You're not supposed to unplug. You're not supposed to be okay on your own. You're supposed to be scrolling, chasing, comparing. So when you step back, when you turn off the noise and listen to the deeper current within, you're breaking a rule the modern world never taught you you could break. You're saying, I don't need to be entertained. I don't need to be affirmed. I don't need to be seen to be real. That's not apathy. That's not withdrawal. That's not giving up. That's arriving. Solitude reveals what distraction hides. In solitude, you discover your real desires, not the ones sold to you. Your actual values, not the ones borrowed from others. Your voice, your rhythm, your truth. And when you know those things, you become unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because you no longer betray yourself to survive it. Here's the beautiful irony. The more time you spend in solitude, the more powerfully you show up in the world. Because now you're not reacting, you're not performing, you're not chasing approval or hiding your truth. You're rooted. You speak less, but say more. You do less, but mean more. You need less, but offer more. That's the real reward of solitude. Not isolation, but integration. Not emptiness, but clarity. At its core, solitude is the soil where freedom grows. Because when you've come home to yourself, no one else can exile you. When you've found peace in silence, chaos can't own you. And when you've made friends with your aloneness, you're no longer hostage to the world's noise. You can move through it, not above it, not detached from it, but with a grounded presence that says, I know who I am. I've met myself in the quiet, and I don't need to be anything else. So here's the invitation. Find moments to be alone, not scrolling, not escaping, just being. Sit with the stillness. Let it be awkward. Let it be uncomfortable. And then stay until the discomfort fades. Stay until you hear something real. Stay until the silence speaks, because buried in that silence is the version of you that's been waiting. Not the mask, not the projection, the you who remembers, the you who doesn't need fixing, the you who is already whole. You don't need to run anymore, you just need to return, and solitude is the path.